We've all been there. You experience a new TV show, film, or book, and you're dying to have someone else to talk to about it. You want your friend or family member to enjoy something as much as you did, and you know that they will enjoy it if they just gave it a shot. You crave the satisfaction of giving a good recommendation and love the sweet dopamine hit of having someone come back to you with a thanks or a whoa, that was really good, bro. But of course, it doesn't always work out that way. In fact, I would actually say most times it doesn't work out that way. You'll either get an awkward smile with the vague promise of checking out your recommendation, or even worse, the person will try out your recommendation and not enjoy it as much as you'd hoped. Recommendations are things that I feel many people don't give proper thought to, and it's a topic that I have personally not seen covered very much online. So I had a good old think while drinking my beer and maple syrup, and identified 3 key questions that I think you should ask someone before you give them a recommendation. They are: what medium of story are you looking for? What tone are you in the mood for? And finally, how long a story do you want to experience? This video is going to dig deeper into why those questions are so important, and I hope by the end you'll be inspired to give recommendations that better resonate with the specific person that you're talking to. I'm John from The Author's Anvil, and this is my guide on how to recommend someone a story. Enjoy! The first thing you actually need to think about when recommending someone a story is the medium. For those who don't know what medium means, this is simply another word for the platform or lens through which the story is told, whether that's through filmmaking, the written word, an auditory experience, or whatever. Medium is not the same as genre, we'll get to that later, but it is crucial that we understand what different mediums can bring or not bring to a story before we recommend one above the other. A lot of the following is going to be fairly obvious, but hey, I like to be thorough and precise when we talk about this kind of stuff, so bear with me and let's just make sure that we're 100% on the same page here. The oldest form of storytelling is the oral tradition of speaking or singing to an audience. The classics of the Odyssey and Iliad are of course the most traditional examples here, but I would now lump modern audiobooks, podcasts, and radio shows in here too. Similar to books, oral storytelling is a medium that gives the audience a lot of room for imagination. Although descriptions are often given to characters and settings, each listener will have a unique image painted in their mind. What is dissimilar to books, however, is the fact that they can be delivered with some dramatic flair, with the narrator being able to use voice acting skills to further bring characters to life.
All right, I'm not what I appear. None of us is. I'm not a butler. I'm not even German.
Audiobooks and podcasts are great to recommend to people who like multitasking or who travel a lot. The only thing perhaps to consider is the quality of the narration or voice acting, though these days, given how popular audiobooks are, I don't think this is too much of a problem anymore. So on to books, or the written word if you want to get pretentious. Similar to audiobooks, the audience is given a lot of liberty to imagine how characters and settings feel, but are perhaps given even more imaginative freedom as they have to imagine the voices of characters too. Although graphic novels, audiobooks, and e-readers have had a huge surge in popularity over the past couple of decades, there is something still very charming about holding a physical book. It sounds strange, but a book engages so many of our senses in unique ways. The smell, the feel of the pages, the weight of it in your hand. The downsides are of course that you have to take care of these things, and it can be a pain to transport them. I'd personally recommend books as a medium to people who like to consume stories as a serious hobby. These kinds of people set aside time each day to engage in stories and are likely to have a nice place to read or enjoy collecting them. Of course I was going to talk about graphic novels in a video like this. Now before everyone gets mad, I'm using graphic novel as an umbrella term for comics, manga, webtoons, and paintings. It is a static, visual medium of storytelling that involves pictures of some description. While you get the same physical sensations you get with a book, except for webtoons of course, you do sacrifice a lot on the imagination factor, as you of course have visuals for your characters and settings. However, what I love about graphic novels that is unique to the medium is the paneling and layout of the pages. When done well, there is so much subtlety and hidden layers of storytelling that can happen simply by how the author or artist has laid out the page. I will totally do a video about this someday. I would recommend graphic novels to anyone who perhaps doesn't like reading, or who maybe has reading issues such as dyslexia, but still wants the physical experience of a book. I would also recommend graphic novels to anyone who loves art, graphic design, and typography, as those mediums combined are what make a graphic novel. I think this is a good segue into animation now. Perhaps this is sacrilege to some people, but again, I'm going to use animation as an umbrella term for 2D, 3D, and anime. It is simply a method in which an artist or studio creates a moving image by rapidly putting together a sequence of drawn images together. Oh, and just a quick aside, but anime is not a genre or medium in itself. It is simply animation originating from Japan. Just like in any visual story, anime can vary hugely in its style and tone, so people really need to stop referring to it as if it's its own specific medium. Okay, rant over, let's continue. Animation goes heavy on visuals and nearly always includes sound as well, leaving nothing up to the audience's imagination. However, animation is super cool because unlike live action film, the creator has much more freedom to tell the story they want. There are less budgetary constraints to create strange new worlds, they can draw a character's expression exactly how they want without relying on an actor's performance, and it is much easier to tell compelling stories about non-human characters. Unless of course you decide to abandon everything that made your studio successful and turn into corporate shills. There has unfortunately been a perception for a long time that animation is just for children or man-children, and honestly one of the goals of my channel is to help change that perception. The success of recent adult shows has been doing a lot to help out with this, but in the Western world these successes have been mostly constrained to comedies. I think some of the trouble is also that people who aren't used to animation struggle to connect with characters that don't look completely realistic. The immersion in a story is broken for them because they expect to see a live-action human instead of, this. I would genuinely recommend animation to anyone, however I definitely want to scope out the right tone and style for that person beforehand. More on this later. So let's talk about live-action film and TV, probably one of the most, if not the most consumed form of storytelling today. Similar to animation, you're treated to visuals, sound, and crucially, real-life humans. I think live action is so appealing because it offers a full storytelling experience while being a passive activity. Other mediums such as books and graphic novels require much more active concentration and are thus not perceived as much of a relaxing activity. I do wonder whether this is linked with the fact that you have to literally use more imaginative brainpower when reading a book. Any scientists, let me know if this theory has any legitimate backing, because I have no idea. I think live action film and TV also has the advantage of being a culturally social thing to do. It's common to go to the cinema with a friend or date, or have friends over for a film night, or watch TV in the evening with your flatmate. It is less of a thing to communally read a book at the same time or listen to a podcast in a group of friends. I feel as though that in the Western world at least, you could recommend live action as a medium to pretty much anyone as long as you get the tone and length correct. Again, more on this later. I've personally never come across anyone who has been against watching a live action TV show or film. At worst, they might just have a preference for a different medium rather than an active dislike. To end this section, I would like to briefly touch on video games. Video games are absolutely a storytelling medium and can be a powerful one at that due to the immersion that comes with the audience being able to interact directly with the story. However, it is also the most troublesome medium to recommend because there are many hard barriers to people experiencing a video game. You have to buy a console or gaming capable PC, you have to have a certain level of technical skill to progress through a story, and other factors such as gameplay mechanics can affect your subjective experience with a story. With these barriers in mind, I will be disregarding video games from this point on, as I think they warrant their own separate video. So as we've seen, different storytelling mediums have their own strengths and weaknesses, and different people subjectively enjoy them for different reasons. It is therefore crucial to ask the person this question first. What storytelling medium do you want to experience? Now, onto something a little spicier. Tone versus genre. Now, I have a bit of a gripe with asking people about their favourite genre in order to recommend them something. I feel it often leads to people to just stay within a genre that they feel comfortable with, and thus they aren't willing to experience anything new. My other problem with genre is that it is quite hard to define, and often stories cross into several genres at once. For example, the action genre may at first glance be quite an easy one to define. Badass protagonist who is good with guns and hand-to-hand combat must complete a mission or personal quest against several other people who are also good with guns and hand-to-hand combat. However, this definition could apply to several stories that in my opinion are vastly different from one another. Hot Fuzz is an action film that is heavily comedic and satirical, whereas something like Die Hard is grittier and much more serious. If someone asked me to recommend them some action films, it would be odd to put Hot Fuzz, Die Hard, Indiana Jones, and Dredd in the same list, even though they fall under the action genre. This is why I actually prefer to ask about tone rather than genre. What exactly is tone? I personally really like this definition from literarydevices.net, where tone is a literary device that reflects the writer's attitude towards the subject matter or audience of a literary work. In simpler language, tone is all about the emotion and atmosphere created in certain scenes, or as the kids say, the vibe. For example, in Hot Fuzz, many of the deaths and shootings are depicted as comically gory and/or played for a joke. While the characters are treating the deaths seriously, there is always enough ridiculousness in the situation to prompt a laugh from the audience. The tone of Hot Fuzz is light, fun, and comedic. Meanwhile, in an action film such as Blade Runner, the violence is very grounded, visceral, and emotionally charged. None of the writing or directing leads us to feel that we should find any of the deaths in that film funny, in fact quite the opposite. The tone of Blade Runner is dark, gritty, and cyberpunky. This brings me neatly to another point about tone: setting. A gritty sci-fi romp like Blade Runner has a very different vibe to something set in our world such as Mission Impossible. Some people may prefer a sci-fi setting, while others might prefer something more grounded in our reality. Both have their pros and cons, which I won't go into in this particular video, but the point I'm making is that it can be a deciding factor for whether someone enjoys a story you recommend. Setting creates atmosphere and immediately establishes for the audience what kind of story this is going to be without any character or plot. Look at some of these shots of Dread, then look at these shots of Kill Bill. We immediately get a different tone by just looking at the colour palette and style of shot. I've just been using action films as examples for this section, but what I'm saying is true for any story, whether it's slice of life, or a courtroom drama, romance, or whatever. So I think in this regard, the second question you must ask someone when recommending them something is this: what tone or vibe of a story are you in the mood for? How do you want to feel while experiencing this story? The answer to this question is far more telling than someone asking what genre they're looking for. Instead of getting a generic answer such as, I want an action film, which as we've just discussed isn't often that helpful, you're more likely to get something like, oh, I'm in the mood for something funny with good action, or I'm in the mood for some dark, gritty action. Don't get me wrong, clarifying the genre can also be helpful, but I would have this as more of a follow-up than the leading question. The final section of this video can be summarised thus: size matters. No, really, it does. One of the biggest mistakes people make with story recommendations is to do with length and commitment. If your mum has just finished reading the 15-book saga of the Wheel of Time, now might not be the time to recommend them A Song of Ice and Fire. Or if your friend who's currently caring for their newly born child has only half an hour a day to watch TV, it might not be the best idea to recommend them a show with hour-long episodes. But guys, seriously, stop having kids, it's lame. Notice how those two examples I gave spoke to two different concepts of length: the overall duration it takes to consume a story, and the size of the chunk that someone can have in one sitting. The question of length is the simplest thing to ask, but again, it often gets overlooked. How frustrating is it when someone pitches you a really interesting TV show, but then it turns out to be 7 seasons with 24 episodes apiece, when you were just looking for something a bit lighter to consume? Or in reverse, you could be looking for a longer story and then be disappointed that there's only 1 season of it. Your third key question is therefore the following: how long a story are you looking to consume? So, once again, let's go through the 3 key questions that one should ask when recommending a story. What medium do you want to experience? What tone or vibe are you in the mood for? And lastly, how long a story are you looking to consume? With these 3 things in mind, I think we can all get a bit better at sharing and recommending each other stories in a much more productive way. Last note, as this is perhaps a more subjective thing, but when recommending someone a story, try to be chill about it. There's nothing worse than aggressively hyping up something or insisting that your friend will love a story and then they try it out and it doesn't meet their expectations. It's awkward for you and it's awkward for the person. Just keep it chill, yo. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Hope you found this vaguely interesting, and let me know in the comments if the techniques discussed in this video helped you out or not. For more fictional musings for the curious soul, check out the rest of my channel. Thanks for watching and have a swell day.